Okay, we are back on the Pocher Mercedes, and I need to do the chrome, and there's a lot of chrome on the car that I need to do extra. And also, as I've said before in a lot of the other videos for this, the client who's having me do this for him ordered a lot of parts from Model Motor Cars. Again, I've showed this card before, Model Motor Cars. They sell extra parts for these Pocher models to give you some more realism and extra detail. And so one of the things he bought was a new windshield frame to go here. This is what the kit part looks like. And I can tell you from experience, from doing the other one, this can be a pain in the butt to fit in place because it doesn't want to fit. So there's a screw hole here and one here, and there's screw holes in the side of the body. So getting this stretched around the body to get those screw holes in, it just, like everything else on this, it just does not want to fit. Now once you get it in, it's fine, but it does not want to fit. So if you get the kit from Model Motor Cars, each one of these is a separate piece. And when I saw that on the website, I'm like, cool, this will be a lot easier. Well, not really, because since each one is its own separate piece, it's really difficult getting them perfectly in line. Not only this one vertical, that's not too bad, but getting the two side ones perfectly the same on either side is a little bit difficult. I came up with something that should help me later that I'll show you here in a little bit. But let's take a look at those pieces. I think I've showed them before. Here's the center post. Notice there's a peg there. So the first thing you got to do is drill a hole right there. And actually, that's not the first thing I did. First thing I did was on the dashboard here. On the dashboard here, according to the instructions, I cut out a little channel right here, just wide enough for the heel of that part to fit into. And with that hole, that now sets in here like this. Now, since it's only held in with one peg, it can lean side to side and it can rotate left and right. So one of the first things you have to do is draw a center line. I don't know if you can see it, but I drew a center line right there. That goes from the front, from the center of the front of the hood, all the way back to a center part on the back of the car there. So I didn't just measure from there to there. It's like from the front to back of the car, drew that center line. So now when we put this in, the front point of that should be right on your center line mark. And the instructions say to CA it in place. CA is removable if you just do a tiny drop, but I'm just going to use hot glue melt instead. That'll be easier to remove because I might have to take this on and off a few times. And to make sure this doesn't lean left or right, I cut some plastic templates right here. And I started with a 90-degree angle because I want this to be upright. So my little brain thought that this had to be 90 degrees here, but I wasn't taking into account the other angles. So I started with two pieces at 90 degrees and put them in the channels like that until it all set in place. And of course I quickly realized that 90 degrees wouldn't work. So I just kept changing that angle here. I started cutting that angle here until they both fit in. And these are the same, obviously. So the two pieces, the angles are the same. So I just kept cutting it and sanding it until that fit. And they both fit the same, and it holds that post straight up and down vertical. And I would use that angle, and I would transfer that onto the windshield template. I'll show you the two templates I made here in a second. So that angle got transferred to the template. And also, one other thing that I did to the glare shield here is this surface right there. When you look at that surface, which that's where the old windshield would slide into, but if you take a closer look at that, a side view profile is shaped kind of like this. And of course that would be the glare shield panel. And that step right here is where it slides onto the body of the car here. And right in here, this is where the old windshield would fit. Well, what I did, I went in here and I sanded this at an angle like this and like this. And I'll explain why. So basically that got removed, And I did that to help the kit. It comes with some material to make a frame for the lower part of the windshield panel. And I did that to make more room for that. Now you don't have to do that, but if you don't, then that has to be positioned further back quite a bit, and you have less material for it to bond onto the body. The further back that is, the looser it is, and the less material you have to bond on. You want it as far forward as you can. You can't shove it on all the way forward, and I'll show you here in just a second and why that is. So, as I said, the kit, the windshield kit, comes with this channel material, and this is what this will set in here like this, and the bottom edge of the windshield slides into there. So you have to cut two pieces, one for here. Let me widen this out a little bit. One sets in here like this, and the other one obviously sets in here like this. So again, this is why I removed some of that material, because this piece it doesn't go straight up, it leans back. So I removed that forward lip corner there, so that can set in here better and have that forward more. Again, you're not going to be able to get it all the way. But like I said, if you don't modify that edge, this has to be back a lot more in order for that to fit in there. Now that surface is curved, so you start by cutting a straight piece, make it a little bit longer than you need, and then you just start bending this and then filing it shorter until it fits in here nicely. So here's this one for this side. Notice it's got the curve in it. That's going to set in here like this. And then this one, same thing, sits in here like this. Now you should mark those so you don't confuse left and right, inboard and outboard, all that good kind of stuff. And of course that goes back in here like this. And then you have the side pieces. Here's our left and right side pieces. Notice again there's a post, and the instructions have you drill a hole right there, and another one here. They give you the dimensions starting from that corner. It's like 2.5 millimeters down and 0.5 millimeter forward, and the original kit hole is right there. That's going to get plugged up, and these then set in like that. If you just put it in and kind of leave it, it's just going to fall like that. So they don't want to stay, and so you're going to have to glue those in. But you can put that anywhere. I mean, it can lean in and out. It can rotate this way. Obviously, there's exaggerated positions. But finding the exact correct position is not easy. It's very time-consuming. It's very tedious, fiddly, whatever word you like to use. And of course, there's one for the other side as well, right over here. So getting these in the exact right position, again, is just very tedious work. Now, the one thing that will definitely help is go ahead and make your windshield template. Now, the top is, the height is not right. I'll have to figure that out later. But this is the same angle from the other pieces I used earlier. Right here, that's the same angle there. So I know that's going to fit that windshield panel. So I started with it a little bit long, but I got that corner correct. And I would slip it into the frame, the lower frame, slip it into here. Now I hot glued that to the center line, so now that can't move. And I did that with both of those pieces in. So I got it vertical and centered, and I hot glued it down so that center post can't move. That's pretty important, because if this is moving around on you, you're going to have a really hard time doing the rest of it. And I would just put this in position, holding it tight up against the car body. So holding everything up tight against the car body, and then just hot glue it in place. Now again, you'll have to trial fit this a few times. You start with a little bit long, it won't fit, so you cut it shorter, you keep cutting it until it fits. Or you can hold it to where it looks good and then measure the dimension, whatever works for you. But once you have this looking good, you then hot glue that one in place, and then you try to get the other side to match. And then once you have it all matched and hot glued in place and where you like it, then that's pretty much it. You're pretty much done. Well, until final assembly, because obviously this is not final assembly. This is going to do a couple of things for me. What I'm doing here, this is going to get me the correct shape for the windshield panel. So I now have a template for the windshield. And I'll cut one identical to this to put over here, and that should get me in a ballpark. Once this is right, that make an identical one. And again, the instructions tell you that from a front view, that post should be vertical. I mean, it'll be leaning back, but again, from a front view, it should look vertical. And from a side view, the post holding the light should be vertical. And it should just follow the curve of the car. And so once you get everything in, and again, I've got another template for the other windshield here. Once you get everything in and glued in place, well, we need to preserve that positioning. And I made something that's going to help me for that. I'll show you here in just a few minutes. But now we pretty much have everything fitted, and obviously I'm going to be painting this model. So obviously these pieces have to come off, and after I paint the whole body, they need to go back on, and I need to be able to glue them back in place in the exact same position. So like I said, I made a tool to help me do that, that we'll take a look at later. So yeah, let me just get this hot glued in place, and we'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so now that we have those on, they are temporarily glued on with hot glue melt. Again, as I think I said earlier, the instructions say to use CA to hold them in place so that you can then just break it off. CA is, I mean, it is removable, but the hot glue melt just peels off very easily. You don't have to scrape and sand any excess off or whatever. You can see I have the two windshield templates cut out. The height is not correct, but everything else is, and they are labeled for up and inboard because those angles are different and they are not 90 degrees. And the instructions say to make sure that when viewed from the front, when viewed this way, that the post is vertical, straight up and down vertical, and when viewed from the side, the post that holds the light is vertical. And they are. And also, I want to make sure that the distance from that point to another point, an easy one to measure is from right there, is exactly the same as that point to there. So I measured between those 2 points and those 2 points, and those are the same. As best I can tell, that vertical part, or the center part, is vertical. So if those two dimensions are exactly the same, and those two dimensions are exactly the same, and the hole that I drilled here is in the exact same spot as the hole that I drilled here, then if the distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here, then those two side pieces are perfectly in the same exact position. And obviously I'm going to have to take all of this back off for final assembly. And when you take the hot glue off, when you take the hot glue off here, this thing can really move around. I mean, it's really on one point. So to make sure that when I do a final assembly, it goes back exactly as it is, I did something that I think is kind of genius. I made this little template frame. Yeah, it looks ugly, but check this out. I put it in here, like that. Push that down, like that, right there. And then notice those points. I got little holes drilled here and here that those little posts go into. So again, that dimension here to here is the same as here to here. And that took a lot of futzing around. It took me, I know it looks like crap, but that took me a long time to make. But I'm fairly confident that it's really going to pay for itself when it comes back time to do final assembly here. Because now it's held in the point where that hole is here, it's held in that point here, and again held here and held here, so it's held in 2 points. Now, if I take the glue off, this can still pivot between those 2 points, but now I've constrained it by 2 points. So all I do is I push it in until it contacts the side of the car, and then it can't move anymore, and that's where it goes. And plus I'm going to make the piece that goes here. When you look at, I don't remember if I said this before or not, but when you look at the original kit frame, you'll notice there's a lot of excess material. See if I can set it there without scratching anything. There's a lot of excess material here and along here that is optional. When you look at the instructions, for the new windshield kit here, they say optionally you can add that excess material here. By the way, that hole here gets filled in, and that excess material would cover it. And you'll notice I drew it off a little bit, so ignore those lines because they're not perfect. I'll have to redo those. Now, the way they say to do it on the instructions for this is to just cut that out of like chrome foil tape and just stick the tape down. Well, I guess that works, but in my opinion, that seems kind of cheap. So I've got some brass sheet. I've got some of this, but this is kind of thin. That would probably work, but I've got a piece of brass down there. Look at that. That's a nice big piece of brass. And I bought that probably, man, close to 20 years ago. Our local Sears, I think it's a 24-inch square. Our local Sears hardware was going out of business. So all of their hardware and metal stock was like 80% off. I think I got that big piece like 80% off. And it's been sitting in the shop waiting for the right time to use it. So now that big 24-inch piece of metal, I've got to cut 2 little strips here and here. And I think it's 22 gauge. I forget exactly. Here's the box that came out of. So yeah, 24 by 24 inch. That mark, I think that's on the 22 gauge line. It's like they missed, but I believe that's 22 gauge. So I should have plenty of material to cut a couple of pieces there and even make a few mistakes and still get some to fit right. And what the plan is, once I cut that shape, once I cut the piece, I will solder it to that bottom rail. Now I think I said earlier that the bottom rail here, once you get that bent and into shape, plus I still need to drill the hole for the windshield wiper. So I have to measure and drill a hole there still. But once you get that bent to shape, you're supposed to send it back to model motor cars for chrome plating. Well, since I'm going to be sending a lot of other pieces out for chrome plating, I'll just include those because, like I said, I want to solder that to that extra piece. And I don't know if model motor cars wants to chrome plate bigger, more pieces. So I'm just going to throw those in with my other parts that are getting chrome plated. Again, if you're doing this kit and all you're doing is this right here, you send it back to model motor cars, they chrome plate it. That's part of the price for the kit here. But I would rather just throw it in with my other pieces. That way I get all the parts back at the same time, and it won't cost me any extra because the guy gave me a quote for like a tree of parts. And so that should be fine there. But it'll be soldered along here, so that'll all be one piece that gets glued down. That's the plan. If I can't get that to work out right, then it'll just be a separate piece that gets glued down. But for now, the plan is to solder that. Also, one thing I want to mention, as I said before, as best as I can tell, this piece here is exactly the same as this piece here. However, the 2 lights aren't facing the exact same direction. From a top-down view, that one is like angled up a little bit, and this one is angled in a little bit. So those posts that hold those in are just a little bit bent. So I'm going to slightly tweak those when I take it apart to do the final fit. I will slightly tweak those. I got to be careful not to bend too far because I don't know what that'll do to the chrome. But so anyways, so the next step for me, is to, well, I need to use some masking tape. I will lay masking tape in here, draw out the shape I want, cut it out, transfer that to the brass. Once those are done, solder, as I said a few times already. I feel like I'm repeating myself now. Sorry about that. And then I can focus on these, which I've already made those. Let me put the camera down and I'll show you what I've done here. Okay, so now that those are in, like I said, I want to talk about the chrome for the rest of the car. I made 2 of these. Now this is copper, and I made this out of a piece of, this is a mangled bent up piece of copper bar, and this was actually the winding out of a transformer. Friend of mine, a colleague, ended up with this giant transformer that our company was throwing out. This thing probably weighed over 500 pounds. And he took it home and spent, I don't know how much time, cutting this thing apart. Well, these are what the windings of the transformer look like. That's how massive this transformer was. This was part of the windings of that transformer. And he got a ton of this copper out. Well, maybe not a ton, but a lot. We took it to the recycle place, and I forget how much he got for it, but he got a pretty good coin out of that. So he gave me a few pieces of this, and it is fairly soft. It is easily bendable, which is good and bad, that I'll explain here in a second. So I basically just straightened a piece out, got it as straight as I could. I sanded off the varnish. This is like a, I don't know if it's lacquer or enamel, I'm assuming it's lacquer, but I sanded off all that lacquer coating and squared it up, cut a 14-inch length piece out of it, and then cut that on the bandsaw to get the taper. This is 4 millimeters at the front, 4 millimeters at the front, and then 8 millimeters at the back. And then I scribed a center line, and then I filed to put in a kind of a diamond profile or a triangular profile from the edge down to the center line. And because of that, the taper here is, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 degree angle, but the taper here is about a 45 degree angle. So filing that, I had to run my file constantly like this, keeping that taper consistent to get the shape right. And then I sanded it through the grits and then polished it, and I've got this piece right here. And that took a really long time of filing and sanding to get the shape. Now obviously this needs to be cut. This goes on the side of the car, and so it needs to be cut into 4 pieces. 1 piece for the hood, 1 piece for the A-pillar here, 1 piece on the door, and 1 piece on the back. I guess that's the B-pillar back here. And like I said, this is very soft and easy to bend. I said that's a good thing because the piece that goes on the door, well, that goes along here. And if you follow that body line, well, that curves this way. So the piece I cut here I'll have to bend it to follow that curve. That way that chrome strip follows the whole curve of the body here. So it should be nice and easy to bend to follow that. But it's also bad because if I'm not careful with this and I accidentally bend it, if I accidentally bend it where I don't want to bend it, it could be a pain to bend it back straight and have it still look good. Now this is not a final polish. After I cut the 4 pieces and get them fit, before I solder them to the tree to be sent out for brass plating, not brass plating, for chrome plating, I will do one more final sand and polish. There's still, if you look closely, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up or not, but if you look closely, there's still a few little scratches from sanding and filing. I just polished it so I can get an idea of what it would look like. But yeah, so I still need to cut these and figure out how to fit them to the car. But those are mostly done. That took an amazing amount of time to file those to shape. Because one thing, I'm not, for compound angles or tapers, I struggled. I struggled with the file and getting it right, holding the file at the correct angle. But I got it. And then I still need to cut up some brass. Now I have a different brass plate. I've got this stuff which is thicker than what I'm going to put here, but it's thinner than the side pieces. I got a pretty good sized piece of this, and this is the perfect thickness to make the pieces for there. And so again, this is just an example of what that's not the exact right shape. So I need to redo that, but that'll give you an idea of what's going to go in the side of each fender. Those should be fairly simple, fairly straightforward. And also I'm going to do these 3 ridges here. So those will get sanded off, and a piece of brass strip for those. And so I'm just going to keep working, and I'll get back with you when I have more to show you. Okay, here are those parts ready to be chrome plated. I've attached them all on a copper and brass wire tree. There's the trim piece that goes on the front fender. These little skinny ones are for the running boards, so I got 3 running boards per side. That one's on the side of the body behind the door. This one is for the rear fender, and this is the side of the door, the side of the hood, and the windshield frame. So there are 20 pieces total. We got everything on the right hand side over here, all the parts on the left hand side over there, and all the parts are attached to a copper wire. And so after plating, we'll cut them off there, and I drilled holes in the car, in the fenders. Well, I didn't drill the fenders yet, but I will. Where those wires will go through the holes, and that will help secure and lock everything in place. And then it'll be bent over and cut off and ground flush on the back side. Well, maybe not flush, but you know, they got to hold things on. And so yeah, and here's the original. Those are the original parts that come with the kit. Those go in the back trunk part. Those are actually nickel plated brass, and I tried polishing those up a little bit. Those polishes are going to get, but those will be chrome plated to match the chrome of the other parts. And yeah, this was a ton of work, a lot more work than I thought when I started. You know, when he asked me if I could do all the chrome strips, and I was looking at photos, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't look much. A few pieces on the side, a few pieces on the fender, cut out some brass, polish it, plate it, no big deal. But holy crap, this was countless hours of cutting, filing, sanding, polishing. And when I say countless hours, I just mean that I didn't count them. Anyways, so I'm going to stop rambling, and I'll get back with you here in just a second, and you guys are going to see the finished product. I have to wait about a week, so be back with you in just a bit. Okay, we finally got the chrome pieces back from the chrome plater, and I don't know how well it's going to come up on camera, but I am very happy with these. So when I dropped them off, I was then shown how bad my polishing skills are, which, you know, so when I first showed him the tree of parts, right away he was like, you know, wow, that's cool, and you spent a lot of work on that, and he definitely appreciated the amount of time that I spent making the parts and polishing them and putting them on this tree to be chrome plated. And then he was like, there's a blemish here, there's a blemish here, the solder here is going to show in the chrome, and what did you use to polish it with? Did you use a Dremel tool? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I can tell where you stopped and started with your Dremel tool. And I'm starting to think, crap, I'm going to have to take this back home, polish it again, bring it back. I mean, he's about a 45-minute drive from my house. But then he starts talking about how he can fix those issues. So one of the issues was where I had parts soldered together along here. He said that chrome on top of solder will look different slightly than chrome right on top of brass. And he said he could fix that by keeping it in the nickel a little bit longer, building up a thicker nickel plating so that would hide the solder. And I tell you, I can't tell. I can't see any difference between where the solder is versus where the brass is. Where the blemishes were and the poor polishing skills on my part, He took this whole thing to his buffing wheel and repolished the whole thing as is. And when he told me he could do that, he said, I just want you to know, though, there is a very slight possibility that the buffing wheel could catch some of these sharp corners and rip the whole thing apart. And there's a very slight possibility you might have to remake some of the pieces. And I'm thinking, crap. The thought of remaking any of these pieces just makes me want to cry or throw up or both or just quit. They weren't like necessarily hard to make, but they were very time consuming, and I was very thankful when they were done, and I honestly don't ever want to do it again. At least not for the same type of car, maybe a different type of car, because it'd be something different. I mean, I am thankful he asked me to do this because I learned a lot from this. This is something that I've never done before, and I don't know if I ever would have if it weren't for somebody requesting it from me. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity to do this, and I'm glad I was capable of doing it. I guess I shouldn't say too much until they're installed on the car, because they look fine now, but the true test is once they're installed on the car and what they look like once they're on the car. And I'll be honest with you, I am very nervous about cutting those off and trying to install them onto the car. Obviously, I want the car painted. I want the car completely painted before I attach the pieces, because I think that would be easier than masking off all the pieces and then painting the car and risk scratching them trying to polish the car. So it just makes more sense to paint the car first and then put these on. And so like this one right here, this one goes on the side of the door. This is the other door. And right now I'm having an issue with the paint on the doors. I added some extra thickness to the lower forward edge of the door because it was not flush with the body, and getting that to blend into the rest of the door, I'm having a few issues there. I'll get it. I'll eventually get it. But it's like I'll put the whole thing in primer, and it looks good in the primer, but then when I shoot the black, you can see that transition. So it's just a constant process of sanding it down and trying again. So I can't really put these pieces on the door until the door's done. And the body is all painted black. That's ready for a clear coat. I was going to clear coat the body and doors all at the same time, but the body is ready for clear coat. I could, this piece right here and this one, those go on the bottom edge of the hood. The hood is pretty much done, so those go on that bottom edge here. So I could attach those. I could do those, but I'm scared. I'm procrastinating. So I think what I'm going to do is get the body cleared, get the doors finally done, but those doors are taking me longer than they should have. And then, so this video, I'm not going to be taking any of these parts off this video. Applying all of these chrome trim pieces to the car will be another video. And, and these were the original kit parts. Those are the ones that came with the kit, but those were just nickel plated. So he chrome plated those, so that matches these. So now the sheen, the shine, whatever you want to call it, of the chrome will match from the original kit parts to the new kit parts. But again, I'm going to wait before I apply any of this stuff. But I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm looking forward to putting these on, but at the same time, I'm very nervous because if I screw this up, if I screw it up, I'm going to have to redo it, have them re-chrome plated, and that would be on me. I cannot charge the customer for re-chrome plating because I screwed something up, so that would be on me to cover that. So I really don't want to do that. Plus, I don't want to postpone the build any at all. But yeah, I am just really thrilled about how these came out. So I've got to give the credit to, this is who did it. Polished Treasures, Metal Restoration, Plating. They're in, well, it's just him, it's his business. Chesapeake City, will that focus on it any better? There we go. Chesapeake City, Maryland. There you can see his phone number. You can pause the video here if you need to write that information down. But highly recommend this guy. Very friendly, very nice, very easy to work with, very easygoing, professional guy. He's been doing this for over 30 years. He said that I'm the first person to ever bring him parts for a model kit, for a model car. After doing this for 30 years, I'm the first one to do that. He normally does, like, I guess, lamps. I did notice some car parts and motorcycle parts in his shop, so I guess he does automotive parts as well. But if you have any chrome polishing needs, give this guy a call. And he's not sponsoring me to say any of this. I did ask him if it was okay, if I mentioned him, and he said sure. And I said, oh, I'll give you some free advertising, because he did an excellent job here. I'm very happy with his work. And if I ever have any future plating needs, I will definitely be giving this guy a call. And not just because he's the only one, he's the only one around. He's the closest one to me. It's like a 45-minute drive. And after that, it's just, yeah, there's like nobody around that I could find. I guess you could mail stuff to him. I really didn't want to box that up and mail it, so I really wanted to drive it. So I wanted to find someplace local, someplace close, and he was the closest. And as far as I'm concerned, he's the best. So I'm glad I found him. I'm glad I decided to take him to him. So thank you, Donald, and appreciate all the hard work you did with this, because I know he was sweating, polishing those with his power wheel and not catching one. But to go over all of those with a power polishing wheel, whatever you call it, and not catch an edge or a corner and rip stuff up, yeah, good job. So I don't think I could have done that. So anyways, I am actually going to end this video here, because I've got a lot of work to do with the paint and polishing on the doors and the car body. So it'll probably be a few weeks, maybe, I don't know, before I get another video out. And hopefully in the next video, we can look at some of this chrome and see how some of this chrome goes on. But I'm going to stop talking, and again, thank you guys for watching. Thanks again to Donald for doing my chrome plating. And until next time, as always, thanks for watching.